welcome back to A Little Literary Love. Glad y'all are with me today. Today is going to be my October end of the month wrap up. I did really good for the whole month of October. I think we have, I just counted it up and I can't remember. So I have 18 books to talk about. Now granted, a lot of these I read novellas, so hopefully those will be a bit quicker, but like I said, 18 in the end half of October, so that put my total of books and novellas, whatever, for the whole month of October at 31, which is the most I read. Like I said, there was a lot of novellas, so that's probably why the count was so high. Since October, I was feeling in the spooky mood. I read a bunch of Halloween novellas, so I did make a vlog of that. So I'll put that in the cards. But yeah, so we're gonna get into it, and hopefully this video isn't super crazy long. So starting right off, I read Titan by Jillian Graves. This is the first book in a series, although she hasn't gotten the other books of the series out yet. This is a monster romance. This is about gargoyles. So this is about our one character of this like gargoyle team, Titan. That's the name of the book. And these gargoyles are like protectors of these like magical artifacts. There's like a room or something that then like disappeared or got stolen, so they are trying to find this room and find like a key that opens this room so that they can guard it and protect it, something. And then they come across this woman who is a sugar baby, and she happens to like get in contact with this guy that could potentially have the key. And so they hire her, and as like Titan hires her as his like sugar baby, to then be able to kind of infiltrate this like art dealer person that she knows. I didn't like this one as much as I was hoping to. I gave this only 3 stars. I just thought the whole plot and everything was just really bogged down, and I thought it was a little bit too much, and I got really bored with it. I did really like the dynamic between the two characters, Titan and our female person, the sugar baby chick. They did have a little bit of a daddy kink thing going on. Steam on this was high, so I liked their interactions together, but otherwise I was kind of bored with this. So yeah. Then I read Born Darkly, which is the first book in the Darkly Madly duet by Trisha Wolfe. I picked this one up because I heard basically what this is about this psychologist, and she talks with like prisoners, and either like goes to like court and stuff, and either says that they are like insane and they shouldn't go to jail, they should go to like a insane place, or they're like, yeah, they're definitely not, I don't know, whatever. So anyway, so she is the psychologist, and she ends up talking with this prisoner who is on death row. He is a serial killer, and they fall in love, I guess. I gave this 2 stars. I did not like this. I was expecting to really like this because I've heard such good things about this. I did not like this. I didn't understand how this was a romance. I was very intrigued by both of our characters and like their psychology, like that bit I was very interested in, I found fascinating. But then we got to the point where like they're kind of together, and like their whole romance didn't make any sense to me. This is very dark, because like I said, this guy is a serial killer, and you walk through some of his like killing people. There's a bit where there's like some like torture, physical and then also psychological. There is murder that takes place in this, so this is a dark book. I would consider the steam on this medium. It just, like I said, the whole romance bit of it didn't make any sense to me. I feel like this would have been better just as like a thriller or like a mystery or psychological thriller kind of genre without the romance bit. It just didn't, I didn't understand it. So I will not be continuing on with this duet. Then I read Love, Laugh, Lich by Kate Pryor. This is a novella. This is a monster romance, but this is also an office monster romance where basically like this Lich, I guess, which kind of remind me of like a Grim Reaper kind of person. Like he's got a hood and like a sickle, I think is what it's called. And he, like, evil has kind of like taken over this like office that this girl works at, and so now she's the secretary for this monster creature, and she has the hots for him, and he like does things and like makes spells, and she's like, well, I can help you with some of your spells by offering herself to him. And yeah, so I surprisingly really liked this. It was very funny, and I was not expecting that, but I really appreciated that and I really enjoyed that. So I gave this 4 stars. I was very surprised by this. The stigma on this was also really high, and I just really enjoyed this. And she's got more books in this like little series. There's another one, the next one I think is about like an orc or something in the office, so I'm excited to read that one too. But yeah, I really liked it. Then I read Blood and Secrets by Beatrix Hollow. This is another like novella length book. This is a male vampire romance about these 2 guys, and they are vampire hunters, and they are at this college like undercover because they heard that there is a sect of vampires at this college, and they're trying to like be undercover and act as like initiates into this vampire society, to say like, hey, yeah, we might want to become vampires so they can like infiltrate it and like take it down from like the inside. But one of them accidentally gets turned into a vampire by one of the vampires in this sect, and so they don't know what to do. Especially one of our males, the male that didn't get turned into a vampire, has had this like obsession with the other one and has had this huge crush on him. And when the other one's like turning into vampire, he's like, hey, you need to just like kill me because it's bad. And that guy's like, no, I can't do that because I can't let you go. So they're freaking out because they don't know what to do. And he's all like, well, he's a vampire now. I have been taught to kill vampires, that they are evil and that I hate them. But he's finding out that his best friend, like, he's a vampire, but he still has a soul, and he's still insanely attracted to him and still loves him. So this one was really great. I give this 4 stars. This was perfect for October to read. Steam on this is very high. For the most part, I really enjoy Beatrix Hollow's writing and her stories. I did read, if you remember from my mid-month wrap-up, for October, I had read some of her, I don't remember what it was called, like some sort of monster series, and that one I didn't really care for, but I'm still trying her out because I've still enjoyed quite a few books from her, this one included. Then I read My Viking Vampire by Krystal Shannan. This is part of a series. This is about this woman, and she is on the run from her abusive ex, and she ends up running into this town, and there's a djinn creature that wants her. And so there's a vampire, and he is the protector of this town that she stumbles across, and decides he's going to protect this woman because that's kind of what he does in this town. And then unknowingly, this town that she's in is just all supernatural creatures. This takes place like in a world like kind of like in the future, I guess, where the whole world like knows about supernatural creatures, and there's like different laws about them, like it's segregated to where like certain places in America, like supernatural creatures are not allowed to like go to like these states, So they're in Texas in this book, which Texas, I guess, is kind of a sanctuary state for supernatural creatures. But these supernatural creatures in this book have formed this town, and that's only of supernatural creatures except for this vampire guy who is protecting this human woman, and they kind of fall in love with each other. I gave this 3 stars. I thought the beginning of this book was really good, and I thought the overall concept was really interesting, and the background was really interesting, but then there was like a bunch of like side stuff that I just didn't really care about. I don't know, and I got bored pretty quickly with it. The steam on this is gonna be high. I probably won't continue on with the series, mostly because I was like, I just really was craving vampires with this, and like the next books in the series are about these other supernatural creatures in the town, and I just like, I really don't care. So there's that. Then I read Broken Bonds by Bree. This is the first book in the Bonds That Tie series that has blown up. Everybody has been reading this, especially because the last book just came out. So I've heard so much about this, so I thought I would give it a try. This is about our heroine, and she has been caught running because she has been trying to run away from her bonded group. So like in this world, on some level, it kind of reminds me of like Omegaverse stories in a way. Basically, this is like America, and everybody, like, well, not everybody, because there are people that have these like supernatural powers, and then there's people that don't. And these people with like the supernatural powers can form bonded groups, and they're kind of like fated mates in a sense, but it's usually like multiples. Like there's usually a central bond, and then there's like others like around them. And it seems like the central bond can be a woman or a man. In this case, it is her. She is the central bond, and she has 5 bonded that once she has like sex with them, they seal their bond and become fully bonded. So, and then when that happens, both of them are supposed to get like a power boost. So she has been running away from them, and she has been doing this to protect them, but they don't know that. They think she's just like a spoiled brat, and so they find her and send her off to college. And I don't know. So this one I gave 3 stars. I thought it was an interesting premise and an interesting start to this. There's definitely like, it turns into a reverse harem. There's a little bit of like enemies to lovers kind of thing going on. Like in a sense, it almost felt like a bully romance, but not quite. There's no steam to this. Like we don't get really like any steam whatsoever. I don't know. I felt like this first book just didn't feel like a complete story, but it does have a cliffhanger, which is why then the next book, I did continue on with it. This whole series, I don't know. I can understand why people are attracted to the series and really into the series. It felt very new adult to me, and for the most part, I feel like I don't really read that genre anymore. Like when I was first getting into romance, I read a lot of new adult books, but the steam on that is a lot lower than what I now read. My other problem so far with this series, which I haven't finished it, so you won't see all the books in this wrap up, but I have been continuing, and I do hope to try to finish this series. But my biggest problem with it is that there are 6 books in this series, and I really felt like everything could have been wrapped up in like 3 books. I don't think it's necessary that she strung it out into 6 books, which is kind of why I felt like this one, it had no steam to it, and it didn't feel like a complete story. I really wish she would have like condensed the entire series down into, like I said, maybe like 3 books, and I think it would have been a lot better than it is, but it is really addicting too. So anyway, like I said, then I moved on to the second book, which is Savage Bonds. And it's really hard to say what each of these next books are about because, like I said, at the end of the first book is a cliffhanger, and each book kind of builds off of the other. But this one, we finally have our heroine. She has been trying to hide her power, and in this one, she finally uses it and shows off like what she's actually capable of and kind of why she was on the run and not wanting to bond with her group. This one we did get a little bit more steam with this. I gave this 4 stars. I think so far I like this the most out of all of the books of the series that I have read so far. Just because I felt like we found out a lot more about what was going on. We did get finally a little bit of steam, although I would consider it still low to medium steam. But yeah. Then we're getting into some of the Halloween novellas that I read for the vlog that I did. Like I said, I will put that in the cards for you if you haven't checked that out. First one is going to be Scream for Us by Molly Doyle. Again, this is a Halloween novella. This is about a girl who goes to a Halloween party and she meets some men in masks and they have some sexy times. This is a little bit more on the darker side because they like end up running into some people that were like high school bullies to her, and these men that she meet don't really care for that, and they're like, hey, we're gonna take them out for you. This one, I would say steam on this was really high. I listened to this on audiobook, which I feel like is the way to go on this one, just because of the narrators, very sexy. So if you like that, you should go for the audiobook. Then I read Blood Bonds, which is the 3rd book of the Ties That Bond series by Bree. This one I gave 3.5 stars. I didn't like this one as much as the second one. This one, our heroine is in with the enemy territory, I guess, because there's also in this whole overarching plot, whatever, there is these enemies called the Resistance, and I guess they're wanting to like do away with the supernatural people. I don't know. This one we start getting a little bit more repetitive and boring, which is why I dunked it down. But the steam on this is more medium steam. Then I read Not Today, Satan. This is by Calliope Stewart. This is a Halloween Omegaverse novella. So this does have Omegaverse to it. This is about an Omega who is going to this Halloween party. She is supposed to like decorate this Halloween party, and she's dressed up as an angel. And while she is decorating at this house, she accidentally summons the devil. And the devil is an alpha, and he can be summoned by Omegas if they draw like certain symbols and during their heat. And she unknowingly goes into heat and they have some sexy times. I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed this novella. I don't know. I loved the whole Omegaverse vibe. I loved the Halloween atmosphere. It's very steamy, very high steam. It was such a fun time and I loved it. Then I read Force Bonds, which is the 4th book of the Ties That Bond series, and I think that's the last Ties That Bond book. Yes, that is the last Ties That Bond book that I have read so far in the month of October, and I'm finishing out, I should be finishing out the 5th and the 6th book sometime in November. Hopefully, fingers crossed. This one, I'm not really going to say too much about it because, like I said, it builds off of the next one. I gave this 3 stars. I was very bored throughout this book because, like I said, it gets very repetitive and they're like battling and it just goes nowhere. Like, it's like the same thing. Like, they battle it out and they're like, oh no. Very bored. Then I read Trick by Shae Sanders. This is another Halloween novella. This is about these 2 people who are going on a blind date and they go on like a hayride. The girl is like really not feeling the guy. And she's about to like part ways with him, but then they both start like itching profusely, like scratching at themselves, and so they go back to her place to like take a shower because they can't stop itching, and then they end up having sex. I give this 3 stars. This was okay. This doesn't really feel very Halloween to me. It was mentioned it was Halloween once. This is like 30 pages, and the steam on this was not very high. This is called an erotic novella, and I did not find it to be very steamy. There's like one sex scene. I just didn't think this was all that great. It was fine. Then I read Monster Flicker by Teresa. This one is about this girl. She grew up in this cult of they kill like monsters, like paranormal supernatural creatures, and now she's trying to run away because her sister is being bullied. So she's running away with her sister and runs into this creature that they are keeping like tied up, kind of. And he kind of like helps her to escape. And so he's like, in 10 years time, you're gonna owe me. So then 10 years pass, and he comes with some of the cult people that are trying to find her because she's still on the run. They're still running away from them, trying not to get captured by them, whatever. And they help each other out and kind of form a relationship. I don't know. I gave this 2 stars. I didn't really care for this. I thought the premise was really good, but I thought there was way too much to pack into this story within like 100 pages. This should have been a full-length novel, not a novella. Just to feel like it could have been, it just needed a lot more development, and I don't like that we only got little snippets and snippets just to like get through the entirety of the plot that this author wanted to do. Like I said, it just should have been a full-length novel. It should have been a full-length novel, or it should have been a series, not a novella. Steam on this is medium, I guess. Some of the steam was kind of weird too. I don't know. So anyway, then I read Writing the Headless Horseman by Likovich. This is basically just about this witch in this town, and the Headless Horseman comes and tells her that she is his fated mate, and he whisks her off to where he's from, and they have some sexy times. Steam on this can be medium high. There's nothing really more profound to say about this book. That's basically what it is right there. It's very short, very steamy, easy to get through. I gave it 3.5 stars. Then I read Hayseed, a scarecrow monster romance by Vera Valentine. This is a kind of similar to the last one. It's very steamy. Well, wasn't as steamy as I was expecting it to be. This is very short and quick. This is about this girl. She owns a farm, and her ex-boyfriend, who's a jerk to her, is like chasing her through her cornfields after he hits her, and she stumbles across this man who is going to protect her, and then she finds out that he was actually her scarecrow that was in her cornfields. And they end up having some steamy time. But even though they do some steamy time, it was very much more of like a medium steam kind of romance. Again, there are trigger warnings for the ex-boyfriend because she was like in an abusive relationship. It was mostly verbal until we get to this point of the story, and there is some assault that happens. So trigger warnings for that. I get this. It was fine. Very quick. Gave it 3.5 stars, kind of like the last one. Now we're on to the last 3 books that I read, which all of these are pretty chunkers of books. First one is going to be Haunting Adeline by H.G. Carlton. I have heard so much about this duet. Everybody seems to love it. This is a stalker romance. This is about our heroine, who is an author, and she is living in her grandmother's house. Her grandmother has passed away. She's living in this house, and she finds out that she has a stalker. There's this man that keeps popping up outside the window. He comes into her house. She's called the police several times, and then she ends up interacting with her stalker. And in the meantime, in the middle of this, she is also wanting to try to solve the murder of her great-grandmother, because her great-grandmother also lived in this house and was murdered in this house, and her great-grandmother also had a stalker. So she's trying to solve this murder too. I gave this one 3.5 stars. I did enjoy it. I did not care for her heroine. I thought she was very stupid, especially for interacting with her stalker. And I just didn't really care for it. Like, the romance to me on this one wasn't very believable of like why she would fall in love with this guy, but yeah. The steam on this one is very high, is very dirty, and this is pretty dark, but not as dark as the second one, which we'll get to in a minute. A Soul to Keep by Opal Reyne. This is the first book in the Duskwalker Bride series. This is a monster romance. This is about this girl who has been ostracized by her town because they think she is a bad omen, because in this world there's demons, and her whole family was killed by demons except for her. So they think she is cursed, and so they ostracize her. But now it is time, because every 10 years a Duskwalker comes and collects a bride, a willing bride, to take with him, and in exchange he casts a protection spell over this town. So she is supposed to be this, like, she is kind of sacrificed to be this guy's bride, and she goes back with him into the void, which is where all demons are from, and she just becomes kind of his companion. I really loved this one, and I was not expecting to love this one. I gave this 4.5 stars. We'll see if this becomes a 5-star for me. I really love this. This is definitely a slow burn romance. It takes a very long time, especially like the first like 100 pages of this book was really slow to start getting into more of the action. But I loved it that it was more slow burn, because it really developed their character, like how they interacted with each other, and forming trust between these two characters, and like forming their love story. So I felt like their love was just so believable, unlike our last book. The Duskwalker is such a cinnamon roll character, because he's very protective of her and doesn't want her to get hurt, and just wants to do anything to like please her and keep her happy, and he's just so sweet. This was, if you watched my monster romance recommendations video, I had categorized all the monster romances from least monstrous to most monstrous according to their features, like characters, like how they look. You know, some monster characters look mostly humanoid looking. This one would fall on the most monster scale, because he's very not human looking, like almost at all. He has a skull, like is it a fox skull? Some sort of skull, animal skull, as his head. And he's a very weird looking monster. So some of that is also why I bumped it down by half, because I don't really find that like sexy, but the romance of this was just so sweet, and I loved the romance of it, and I do plan on continuing on, because she does have the second book of the series out, and I believe this is going to end up being a 5 or 6 book series, and I'm here for it. I will be reading the next one whenever I get around to it. Then the last book that I read for October is going to be Hunting Adeline, which is the second book of the duet of this series called the Cat and Mouse Duet. This one is much darker than the first one. Some things happen at the end of the first one. We find out, and you find out a little bit more of this in the first one, but the stalker guy is working with these people to try to take down like sex trafficking of women and children, and we delve a lot more into that. Our heroine ends up becoming involved in that, so everything is in this book is revolved around this thing that happened. So I don't want to say too much about this. Just know I gave this 4 stars. I like this a lot more than the first one. Our love story becomes much more believable to me. There's a lot of things that our heroine goes through and then has to work through. There are lots of trigger warnings for this book. There is non-consensual sex, there is rape, there is assault, there is murder, there is torture. This, like I said, this is a very, very dark book, so I do not recommend it for anybody that doesn't really like dark romance. I would probably skip this series. The other thing was I did like our hero of the story a little bit better in this book, but there are still some things that he does that I didn't really care for, so that's why I didn't give it a higher rating. But overall, it was still a very good book and I did enjoy it. But yeah, now I hear my baby crying because she just woke up from a very short nap. But anyway, that is going to be all the books that I read for October. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed my content, because if you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button and like this video if you liked it. But yeah, otherwise, I will see you all in the next one. Bye, guys.